I guess you're the only one that has to hear back there. I guess it would probably be important to tell you that I'm more of a cow person than a business person. I really love cows. I like the business part of farming, but I really enjoy the cow part more. It's nice to be here thinking about grazing cows after the past 2 or 3 weeks of weather we've had. It is amazing that I'm talking to someone about grazing, because about 20 years ago I spoke to Woody Pankey's Concrete Grazers group, because I was a concrete grazer, like you were. I never thought I would be grazing milking cows, ever. We did graze some heifers, but you know, the typical way, you turn them out and take them in the fall. It's more of an exercise lot. So I'll give you a brief history of our pasture and dairy farming experiences, some farm statistics, why we did what we did, and what we have learned. I grew up on a 45-cow dairy farm in southern New Hampshire. And when I was 11 years old, I was appointed director of cow traffic to and from the pasture. So that's what I did for about 3 years. My parents had cleared a pasture that had grown up, and my brother was put in charge of doing that. He was 15 years old, and my dad bought a bulldozer, so that was exciting. So they grazed it, and at the time I didn't realize it. Nobody ever told me, but I'm sure that what my dad decided to do was to pasture it until the roots and the rocks kind of got out of the way so he could mow it. So that 28 acres was divided into 5 paddocks. So that was my initial thing, that you had a big field and you split it up a little bit. And so that was interesting. In 4 or 5 years later, it was converted to a cornfield because my parents expanded the 45-cow herd to a 100-cow freestall herd. So my pasture education ended right there. I was all done. I graduated from college in '72 with a BS in dairy science and proceeded to feed a total mixed ration to the 100 cows. It was corn silage and haylage based. TMRs, total mixed rations, were a fairly new concept then, and haylage was a very new concept. So that's really what I learned in college, how to feed TMRs and how to make haylage. It was great fun. We made a lot of milk. By 1995, we had the highest producing herd in the Northeast. And our herdsmen went to Cornell and got a fancy trophy. And that was kind of, heady stuff. It was interesting. 1995, I think. In '93, we had purchased a Connecticut Valley farm, 250 acres in one flat field. And I thought I died and went to heaven, because our farm in Ware was small fields, hill farm. So if you have all that good land, you're going to grow corn on it or alfalfa or something. Not going to pasture it. But we had 15 acres there that was too wet, so we did use that as dry cow pasture. But the dry cows couldn't eat it fast enough early in the year, so we put red heifers on it. So that was chapter 2 of my pasture experience. And we really got serious about rotational parts. We went rotational grazing. We went from between a 2 and a 7 day rotation, and to me that was really intense. Although I had visited New Zealand in '87, and I had a friend there that milked 800, and I knew they changed their pastures every 12 hours. Milk twice a day, changed grass every 12 hours. Some people had tried to milk once a day. That didn't work too well. I knew they followed their milking cows with heifers. So that was kind of always in the back of my mind. But when we got to Vermont, we had a pretty good reputation for making a lot of milk. So we got involved in a BMR corn study And that suited me to a T because our practice had always been to feed the cows a hot enough ration until the hair caught on fire and then back them off just a little bit. So that's kind of what we did. And that always worked great. In 1994, we leased the Bradford farm and milked 550 cows. So we were, I guess we were up to about 800 then, and plus we had 200 or 250 back in New Hampshire still. At the Bradford farm, the dry cows were put on about a 20-acre pasture, and I'd say typical half-ass style, you know. You put them out there, and when the grass runs out, you start feeding them. And the water was only in one corner, the northwest corner, so that kind of lent itself to doing that. Yeah, let me see. Yeah, this would be that pasture that I'm talking about. And the water was right there. So it was a little hard to do anything else. And of course, this farm was all new to me. The steep slopes, which are right here, they're stony and mostly shale. There's not much grows there. By 2009, the Bradford herd had grown to 800 cows. And the 70-acre hillside farm, I guess it's not in the picture. Yeah, but it's kind of here, I guess, yeah. Became available for lease, and you know, how could we not lease it? You got to lease the farm next to you, right, or buy it or whatever. So then we thought, well, what are we going to do with it? Because a lot of it was too steep to crop. So we decided to put heifers on it. So we had no grand plan to graze heifers, absolutely zero. But we kind of backed into it. So after thinking about that, we decided to go whole hog on grazing and do some milk cow grazing just before we dried them off, because that would allow us to depopulate the barn a little bit in hot weather. And we thought it might be good for them. So the 14 acres right close to the farm, this is the milking center. These fields right here, we decided to use for milk cow pasture.
What kind of pasture?
Pasture for milking cows. Not for heifers, just milking cows. So the heifers were going to have heifers and dry cows. Mostly dry cows would have this, and the heifers would have the farm we leased up here. So we thought we'd save some cropping costs for sure, and we'd save some manure spreading cost. The two biggest fields, oops, oh, I guess can't do that. This one has a brook here and here, and this one has a brook on 2 sides, and one has a brook on 3 sides. So I guess it was maybe 96 or so, our LFO said, can't grow corn there anymore. Well, we could grow corn, but we had to have a big buffer area. So on the little field, this one here, if we took the buffer out of 3 sides, there wasn't much left to grow corn. So that's how that became grass. So I think the biggest thing is that I want to make sure you recognize is that almost everything we've done has had no great amount of planning. It's kind of something happens and you react to it. So I was promoted to designer of electric fences and pasture water systems for the Bradford farm, and I've held that position for 8 years. It wasn't difficult to get the promotion because I appointed myself. I asked Felix, one of our Mexican guys who was smarter, to help with designing the pasture, design the fencing for this pasture. So I thought we'd maybe put a laneway in the field, which would mean extra wire. And he said, nah, let's run them down the road. So that's what we do. We use this road, town road, for our laneway. So it works slick as hell. We own, as luck would have it, we own all the houses on the road. It's a dead-end road. And I tell everybody the only one that has precedence over the cows is fire trucks. But police and milk trucks and everybody else has to wait. Initially, we made these paddocks about 50 feet wide, the length of the field. Because I had this thing in my head that we were going to really do it intensely and strip it and just go right down through. But that didn't work very well because the water wagon would be up here. We got no water there that they can drink out of. So they would tend to congregate up here if it was a sunny day or a hot day, and the manure wouldn't get distributed. So then somebody said, well, make them wider and you can cross fence it and do this and that and the other. So now we have them a lot wider, and usually takes 2 or 3 days to go through.
And where did the water go? Does it stay in the same place?
No, we move the water. That's a good question. So initially we'll put the water right here, and then maybe the next day we'll move it, and then just keep moving it. Actually, this field, we do something that I've been told we shouldn't do or read it. We make it a pie-shaped field, and that way we can get the water on the outside and just run it right around there.
How many cows are you milking at this point?
Well, I didn't give you those statistics, but we have 2 farms. We milk 360 on one, 910 on the other. That's with dry cows. The small farm, our heifers are custom raised from about 3 months to 11 months. We do everything else. The big farm, we raise our calves for about 2 to 4 weeks maybe. Then they go off to a farm where they raise them until they're about 12 months. And then they go to another place where he breeds them and gets them back to us about 2 months before they calve. And there's another variation of that, but it's kind of what it is. Another problem we had on this field, this is really steep. When we thought about fencing it, Felix, the Mexican guy, talked it over, and we said, well, what I've read, you don't want to have them going up and down slopes. You want to have them going across. So in order to go across the slopes, we have to go like that. But I didn't like that from a cow sorting point of view. I liked having them come down to the bottom. And we'd have laneways so we could sort them easy. We could also check the fence and make sure it was live down the bottom. So we put them in there. But I was worried about the slopes. We did put them in. Boy, it worked slick. Cows went right up the slopes, slick as a wing. Thought, geez, I was pretty smart. But later that day, they went to come down the slope. Wouldn't come down. So I didn't realize that cows would go up a lot steeper slope than they'll come down. So we learned that. So what we had to do is we put a cross fence right there. And they would follow that fence down, you know, on an angle on the slope. And then once the trail was made, they were all set. Every year we have a few cows that don't do that. They'll run up, like right here. They'll walk this laneway and then get to the fence, and it's really steep. And let's say there's 60 of them in there, probably 55 of them will go down the slope the first time, and then they figure out it's better to go that way. And then there's 5 we have to kind of teach. Since 2009, I've been taught by a lot of people, like Kimberly, Willie Gibson, Tom Beaudry, Greg Weber, Don Maynard, John Audie, and of course the cows. My native language is English. I speak a little Spanish, But my second language really is cow. I speak cow pretty well. Cows speak to me very clearly. They vote with their mouths and they vote with their feet where they want to be. If we watch and listen to them, they'll teach us. All of the advisors I've worked with always tell me the cows will teach me. And they've been right. Cows can't design anything, but they can sure tell you where they want to be. So what do we do now? We seasonally milk cows once a day on pasture. We used to milk twice. We went away from that, so we just milk them one time a day. And the pastures are, for the milk cows, are always right here, there, and here. Well, occasionally we'll put them in there. I think they were in there the first day I met you.
I think so.
In grass about this tall.
Yeah, it was up over my knees.
Where we milk in Newbury with a 350 cow herd, we only graze 6 to 12 cows, just prior to dry off. The bigger farm, this one in the picture, it's usually 36. And the reason it's 36 is because we have 36 headlocks. That when we bring them in the morning, we offer them 3 pounds of dry matter from corn silage. And we do that so we can monitor their appetites. And it's a pretty good teaching tool. Sometimes they'll come off grass and there's very little grass where they came off. And you think, oh, they're starving to death. Then they'll leave the corn. And then they'll come off a paddock where the grass is this high. And they'll eat the corn right up. And usually the difference is the tall grass is Reed's Canary or something. And they just don't like it. But we graze heifers and dry cows at both farms. Usually into December, once until December 24th. We have some retired farmers who rotationally graze our heifers for daily feed. It's kind of interesting. The last thing I thought you'd be doing is that. We have some pastures for dry cows where we graze a section for 2 to 6 weeks and then put them the other side of the road for 2 to 6 weeks. That's not the best system I know, but in that particular situation it works pretty well. Some paddocks have shade, but most do not. Very few have water. All of our pastures have good qualities and bad qualities. Availability of shade, slope, grass species, access, distance to water, and productivity vary greatly. So this, where are we? This one here, when these cows are in this paddock, this half of the paddock, we'll let them drink there. But normally they have to come all the way back here. And that's a problem when it's hot. And this area where we water them gets denuded.
What about flies?
Flies are an issue. Hasn't been a big problem, but they are an issue. Our milk cows get fresh grass twice a day. One thing I hadn't thought about was the sugar content. So we're doing it usually at 5, 6 in the afternoon. They get fresh grass, so that's probably okay. We go from having a shortage of grass on May 1st for 12 cows to way too much the end of May for 36. So that's a challenge for us. The first day on grass, cows will give 40 to 60 pounds of milk, sometimes a little more. And that's about 24 hours of milk in them. But then they slow up pretty quick. 2-year-olds are more persistent. They'll lose a lot of weight.
Oh, they're tail enders. They're at the end of the lactation.
Absolutely. The heifers that we graze sometimes are a little heavy, in my opinion, from confinement feeding. and they definitely lack exercise. So that's why we're going to continue to try to graze those heifers and probably follow the milk cows with them. Why do we continue to pasture milking cows and heifers? The milking cows benefit from going through a clean foot bath with clean feet and then onto clean grass. Heel warts are controlled better this way. We have some problem with heel warts. The cows benefit from a lot of exercise and I think long stem fresh forage. I don't know that there's any science behind that, but I think they do. Maybe they benefit from a lack of acid-based silage. I think they benefit from shedding some body weight, and that probably improves liver health. I personally believe that that's why heifers that are grazed before calving, when they calve, they do better. And I think part of the reason they have no metritis is the livers are healthy and the liver handles toxins. You drink too much, where does it go? The liver, right? Post-calving issues are almost non-existent for us if we graze them on grass. Heifers or cows. Doesn't matter. Again, I think it's livers. I met a guy from Puerto Rico at a meeting. He milked 1,100 cows and told me his biggest problem was he couldn't get heifers from Vermont anymore. Weren't enough heifers available. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I used to buy all these heifers from the farms that would pasture them all the time. He said, I can't find them anymore. Not enough. He said, I get my heifers from Ohio. And I said, well, same genetics, isn't it? He said, yeah, but I think grazing those hills is what makes the difference. Pretty simple. Another thing I think the cows benefit from is sunlight and less humidity. Our barns are pretty humid. We got a lot of fans in there, but it's still humid. We have a condition called udder rot, which is a smelly abnormality between the front quarters. Just stinks, kind of like athlete's foot, I think. Same principle. Cows seem to do a little better when they're on grass with that. I think it's sometimes the sun gets to it and it's just drier conditions, usually. What downsides do we have? Sunburned teats, grass is killed around the water wagon. You can always tell in these fields where the water wagon has been. There's usually a spot that's either got very little growth or none at all. And if it's been a day when it's been hot and humid, it's a bigger area and a bigger problem. On those hot, humid days, now we give them access to this wooded lot. And that works really well. And it's interesting. What you said is true. They'll come out at 4 o'clock. You can set your watch by it. With plus or minus 10 minutes.
There's your wooded spot.
Yeah, that looks like it. Yeah, it's a pine tree thing. We logged it off a little bit. Left some pine trees. So this must have been when they hadn't been in there yet. But it's amazing. You go out in that field and you stand there and boy, it's hot. And you go into that